I'd like to welcome all of you here for this day, learning about a lot of new developments in financial abuse research, along with some really practical approaches that have been developed over the last few years in helping to keep our adults safer in our communities. My name is Sherry Baker. I'm the Executive Director of the BC Association of Community Response Networks, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. I'm part of a group of 4 sponsors for this event, and we've been planning it, I think, for about 6 months. I think something like that. It seems like a long time. But the bulk of the work and the leadership has been provided by the public guardian and trustee, and especially Kathleen Cunningham. So I really do, we will acknowledge her later, but I really do want to thank her and Harola, her assistant, for what they've done to make this day possible. The other 2 sponsors are the BC Centre for Elder Advocacy and Support. And is Tricia here? Or Joan? Oh, is Joan here? Okay, they will be here. And the other sponsor is the National Initiative for the Care of the Elderly, affectionately known as NICE, and Alison Leaney is here. So we're really happy to be here with you. And of course, how can I forget we're here? And Simon Fraser University, thanks to the wonderful, gracious intervention and support that's provided through Gloria Gutman, and she is here too, and thank you very much, Gloria, for what you've done for us. So we have an action-packed agenda for you, and I'm going to be a really strict taskmaster, or mistress, I guess, however you want to look at it, and I will be tugging on the coattails of anybody who goes over time, so you'll be forewarned. AJ. Look out. But before we start, we are on the hereditary land of the Coast Salish nation, and we've been very fortunate in having Audrey Rivers agree to, who's from the Squamish Nation, and she's an elder, and she's agreed to welcome you all here on behalf of our these people. Thank you. Now, can you see over that?
Good morning. Before I begin my opening prayer, I just wanted to mention that last evening I was on my patio and I was with my daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter, and I was telling my little great-granddaughter the story about Vancouver. A week and a half ago, Vancouver celebrated its 125th anniversary of the big fire in Vancouver. My grandmother recorded the history about the big fire. And on that special day, our Squamish ancestors were celebrating the completion of St. Paul's Church. And they came out of the church and they looked across, and Vancouver was on fire. It was all a forest. So they immediately went down to the beach, and they got into their canoes and they paddled across Vancouver to Burrard, the foot of Burrard Street. They rescued the non-Indian and they paddled them across to North Vancouver for safety. And while they were paddling across, they sang a paddle song. It was the song of guidance and protection for the people to bring them safely to North Vancouver. A lot of these non-Indians became the pioneers of North Vancouver, and I'll attempt to sing the song my grandmother taught me. I'll just sing the one verse as they were paddling across back and forth to the inlet. And my daughter usually does the singing. She's got the voice, but I'll attempt to sing it. One verse in Squamish and the other in English. Nahomun hat malay Chishasta chesiam Hanste quiste quintomo Tane mastama Hanste quiste quintomo Tane mastama. You are the only one, Mother of Christ the King. Have mercy on us all, on all us human beings. Thank you. So, to open my prayer, honored guests, delegates, and participants of Financial Abuse Conference, I welcome you all to Salish territory. Vancouver is shared and surrounded by 5 Salish Aboriginal nations. To the east, we have the Stolo in the Simon Fraser area, in the Coquitlam area. And to the south, we have the Tawasin in the Ladner area. And to the west, we have the Mutskim in the UBC area of Vancouver. And to the north, we have the Squamish, to which I belong, and also the Treslalwick, North Vancouver, which is just across the inlet, Broad Inlet. My ancestral name is Tialtalot. I was named after my great-great-grandmother on my late father's side. And my English given name is Audrey Rivers, and I reside on the Aslahan Reserve in North Van. I just wanted to mention today that there are approximately 20,000 First Nations people that live in the Vancouver area, mainly in the commercial drive area of Vancouver. We have the Tlingit, the Haida, the Shimshian, the Helsik, the Haisla, and the Carrier, and the Nishka, and they all come from the northern part of BC. On Vancouver Island, we have here the Kwakwakila, the Nuchandlik, and the Cowichan. In the interior, we have the Shuswap and many other reserves that reside here. And to the southern of BC, we have the Salish nations from Paul River to Lytton. Many of these people come to they live in isolated areas or villages throughout BC, and they come to Vancouver for housing, for employment, for education, for health, and for wellness. I usually open my prayer to honor the 3 generations of the past, the present, and the future. I firstly honor our past, our ancestors. Because of them, we are all here. I pray for our past, our leaders, and our families, and ask the Creator to continue to watch over them. Today, I pray for our First Nations brothers and sisters who have died on the Vancouver East Side because of their addiction to drugs, alcohol, HIV, and AIDS. I pray also for the missing women and for the women and teens missing on the Highway of Tears, which is near Prince George. Some of these women were mothers and grandmothers. I pray for the families that are enduring grieving and bereavement. I want to thank all the counselors that support the families. I now pray for the present and give thanks to the Creator for bringing you all here for this special event and bringing you all here for this gathering. I ask the Creator to bless this day and to bless each and every one. I pray for the future, our children, our youth, so they will have a safe, a happy, and a healthy future. So today I honor the past, you're learning in the present, and you're applying to the future. I offer a closing prayer which identifies the Abba, the Allah, and the Great Spirit. In Scottish we say Chesiam. Chesiam means the High Spirit or the Lord. It's He who guides and protects and provides. I ask the Creator to give you guidance in your discussions and solutions in working within all the communities. I give thanks to the Creator for providing the resources to bring you all here today. I know many of you have come from near and far, and ask the Creator to protect you all in your travels back home to your family. At this time, I thank Alice and Leni, and am greatly honored to come here and open with a prayer. I will be leaving immediately following my prayer to attend an event, to attend a solstice, and to honor the solstice. Today, the summer solstice will be at 10:16 a.m. Many intentions of prayer. I will offer a special prayer for the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Today is a special day to celebrate National Aboriginal Day, to celebrate our cultures of the Inuit, the First Nations, and the Métis people, to celebrate their contributions as well. So in closing, I ask the Creator to bless the remaining part of this day. In Scottish, I say, Chinquinman Tomi Dinan Squire, Chinquinman Tomi Sia in Equator. I just said, I thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day, and thank you, all my friends and relations. Thank you.
Is that yours? So on behalf, this is mine. This is mine. Right here.
Okay.
So on behalf of all of us here, I'd like to give you this little gift and thank you for your very, very wonderful words.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Allison, can you read your message? Thank you, Audrey. What a great way to start our day and to put it all in perspective. We also are very pleased to have Jay Chalk with us. He is the Public Guardian and Trustee of BC, and he is really our host today in many ways. Jay was appointed Public Guardian, Public Trustee of British Columbia in 1999 and became the first BC Public Guardian and Trustee in 2000 under the new Public Guardian and Trustee Act. He is coming to the end of his second term and will be moving on at the end of this month. And I can tell you that he will be greatly missed by all of us. He has brought a depth of understanding of our communities and the issues that we are all facing in our communities. And I know, although I've only been with the association for a year, everywhere I go, Jay, you are applauded for the work that you've done on our behalf, and we really thank you very much for it. So he's going to... I have to say this now because I think he's going to slip out and do other things because he's coming to this end, so I get to say it before he leaves. So Jay, I know you have a few words that you'd like to share with us, so thank you much. Jay Chalk.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the Spotlight on Financial Abuse, and thank you, Audrey, before you leave, for the welcome on behalf of the Coast Salish people. it was lovely you did that, and in recognition of that, I promise you, I'm not going to sing, because that would be a bad event. Last Wednesday was, as you all know, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and it's kind of amazing because it's really grown from an acorn of an idea that was really just rattling around through to a couple of years ago when Allison Leaney spoke at the United Nations in New York at the first ever kickoff of a World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, to events like this, where really I feel like it's almost like a growing oak tree, to push the metaphor. Just we see more and more recognition. So really, when the purpose is awareness, I think we've really capitalized and succeeded in that. And I know that the people in this room are the key people in British Columbia who have made that happen. So give yourself all a big round of applause for doing all of that. And thank you from the staff of my office, because the work that you do makes the work that they do that much, I won't say easier, but it certainly makes it a lot more pleasant to work with such a great bunch of people across the province. Thank you to our co-sponsors today. We're part of a group that includes NICE, includes BCC's, and Simon Fraser, so thank you to all of you as well. I also bring greetings from the Attorney General, the Honourable Barry Penner, and he asked me that I welcome you, and in his words, I want to acknowledge and welcome delegates to the Spotlight on Financial Abuse event who are meeting in Vancouver today for a forum on the financial abuse of elders. This group of professionals are discussing strategies to prevent, detect, and respond to financial abuse. Financial abuse is a serious concern for all vulnerable people, and particularly our senior population. The Government of British Columbia is committed to supporting healthy, active, and independent aging for all British Columbians. This includes living in a safe, age-friendly communities free from all types of abuse. Just last week, the BC government joined with other governments around the world in recognizing June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. This important day raises awareness on an issue that, unfortunately, is often hidden from public view and from those who could assist its victims. To those who have gathered today for the Spotlight on Financial Abuse, thank you for your dedication to eradicating the financial abuse of elders. On behalf of the Government of British Columbia, I wish you all a successful conference. So, from me, I would just echo that, and thank you again for all the work that you do every other day of the year, but also the work that you're going to do today, and in responding to and preventing financial abuse of seniors and other vulnerable adults. And I wish you all a very successful conference. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. And I have a little bit of housekeeping to share with you right now before we start. And maybe Kathleen, could you tip those name badges if you don't mind? That'd be great. We are going to start the day with a panel discussion. I'd like you to know that there's not going to be an official coffee break, because you know what it is when we get people like all of us together. Once you break, it takes a half an hour to get you all back together again. So we're not going to have official coffee break, but we want you to feel free to get up and help yourself to refreshments whenever you like. Look after any needs that you have, and just make yourselves as comfortable as you possibly can. Take a look at some of the sponsor materials that we have out there for you. We've put some of the materials also in your folders, so you have lots of reading material to take home with you today. The washrooms are out the back, down the hall, and you can go to your right or to your left. There's not that far. And if you need them, there they are there. Linda and Harola are out in the hall, and they may be in and out, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you if you need anything. So that is the housekeeping piece, and if there's anything else, of course, I'll share it with you as it comes up. We're going to have a panel discussion now called Abuse, Neglect, and Self-Neglect, a whole community response. And we've invited 5 people from our communities, from our organizations, to come and share with you the way that they respond to these issues, and also to work from a scenario that's been created for you that I will read to you in a few moments. So I'd like you to welcome the following people up to the table, and I will, when they get here, I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. So if each of you would come up and sit behind your name, that would be great. Thank you. And this is Kathleen Cunningham, who I mentioned a few minutes ago. She's going to be the slide changer. So, and it's a little awkward because they can't see the screen, and she can, and they can't see this. So we may have to just be kind of loose with that. Yep. Thank you. These are the speakers in the order that they will be speaking. I'm going to introduce them all to you now, and because I don't want to interrupt the flow of the discussion as we proceed. So the first speaker is Heather Von Ilberg, who is one of our regional mentors with the BC Association of Community Response Networks. She's responsible for the Kootenay region, and she provides amazing support to the people within that region, to the communities within that region, who have very active, there's about 4 really active community response networks in that region. And Heather's been with us, I think, longer than any of the rest of us and within our organization, and so brings a huge history behind her of how this work has evolved, and we really appreciate her. So I was delighted to be able to invite her to come and share that with you in a few moments. Next to her is Leanne Lange, who happens to be the chair of the board of the BC Association of Community Response Networks. Oh, sorry, Leanne.
It's okay.
Well, Leanne, she's not next. I'm going from the list. No problem. But you now know who Leanne is. And Leanne is the co-chair, actually, with Margaret Easton, who's the other co-chair over at this table of our association. But she's the clinical specialist, adult abuse and neglect for the Fraser Health Authority. Now, you know that the Fraser Health Authority is a humongous organization. So how she manages to even be here today, I don't know. She's a remarkable woman. And she's going to be sharing the designated agency role and response options with us today. But in this role as a clinical specialist, she provides clinical consultation support and education to staff across the whole Fraser Health region, and helps them in their response to situations of abuse, neglect, and of vulnerable adults. So it's a big job, and we're really happy to have you here, Leanne. Next, between Heather and Leanne, is Kimberly Azian. And Kimberly works with the, I'll get her thing here, sorry, the Public Guardian and Trustee's Office. She's the Director of Services to Adults. She's a social worker, and she joined the Public Guardian and Trustee, which we affectionately call the PGT, in the 1990s to help implement the new guardianship laws. So we're really happy to have you on the panel. Thank you, Kim. Next to Leanne is Bernice Smander, and she is with E-Division with the RCMP. She's involved with the community strategies, and E-Division is a province-wide part of the, I'm sure she'll tell you a little bit about it, of the RCMP, but she's responsible for the prevention and program support services. So she's also an active member of the BC Abuse Neglect Prevention Collaborative and has been there since 2010. And she's a great advocate for the work that we're doing, and I really appreciate, I love working with Bernie. She's great to be with. And next to her is Amanda Brown, who is also on the board of the BC Association of Community Response Networks. She is a social worker and is the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority's lead on issues related to the Adult Guardianship Act. Her role is to support staff, provide education, develop and roll out materials related to the Vancouver Coastal Health responsibilities. Her latest projects have been adapting the First Nations REACT manual project to the national stage and designing a designated agency training pilot project. So she'll tell you a little bit about that. So I'm really excited to have all these people all in one place in one room, because as you can imagine, they're really busy people, and this doesn't happen often. Now, before we turn the floor over to them, I'm going to read to you the scenario that has been created that will be referred to from time to time through everybody's presentation, because many people like to know, like, what do you do? How do you respond to adult abuse? What do you do in a community when you suspect it's happening and you don't know what to do? So we'll be talking about that. But here's Dora's story. Dora has Alzheimer's. She lives in a care facility in North Vancouver. She uses a wheelchair. Her son, Jason, moved into her condo when she left. Her daughter lives in Toronto. Jason has EPOA, I don't know what that is.
Enduring power of attorney.
Sorry, enduring power of attorney. So this is probably a familiar scenario to many of you. Jason took Dora to the bank to arrange for a loan. $50,000 he was able to get $50,000 secured by a mortgage on her condo. The banker noticed Dora seemed nervous, always looking at Jason before answering questions. Jason asked the banker to put the loan money in his account. The money is for condo renovation, so he could sell it for her, and $5,000 was a gift she wanted him to send to her only granddaughter in Toronto, who is graduating soon. Dora is found in the facility lobby crying. Jason is gone. Dora tells the manager her son is stealing her money and giving it to his friends. The day before, Jason told the manager there was no money to pay facility fees. So these are the questions that will be considered woven through the panel's presentation. What might the bank lender do if they were concerned? What could the facility manager do if they were concerned? How might the designated agency, that's the health authority, approach the situation? What role could the public guardian and trustee play? Is there a criminal offense? How can the local community response network help? And we happen to have people from the North Shore Community Response Network right here. What information is needed if Dora's situation is to be reported? So let's find out. We're going to start with Heather Von Ilberg from Nelson, and she's going to talk about the BC Association of Community Response Networks. And they each have 10 minutes. Okay, Heather, if you can check your mic and use your mic, please.
Is it on?
I might bring it closer to you.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I don't have a watch because I'm from Nelson, so Sherry's going to keep me on time. So I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of how the Community Response Network developed. It is attached to the Part 3 of the Adult Guardianship Act. There's a sentence in the midst of that act that says communities may choose to develop networks of support, and that's where all of this came from originally. Originally, there was an implementation office at the Public Guardian and Trustee, which was staffed by 2.5 people in that office, and then that office assisted in developing community response networks around the province. And we knew that we couldn't get funding for implementation forever, so at about year 5 or 6, we decided to start looking at what we could do to sustain these networks when government funding was no longer available. So we formed a task group, and that task group worked for about 2 years to get a foundation going. We then found out we needed to be an association, not a foundation, so that we morphed into the association about 6.5 years ago. And basically what we are is a network of people at the provincial level, mentors. There are 6 mentors, and Sherry and Linda Hall, and then there's the community response networks around the province that we support. The provincial organization supports us and provides resources and materials and that kind of thing, and supports the mentors to work. And then we have coordinators in communities, some of whom do fundraising and get money, and some of whom are volunteer. Originally, when we were funded by the Public Guardian and Trustee, we only had paid coordination, and so there's been a change as the funding structure changed to less money. In many communities, people are doing fundraising themselves, and a main role of the provincial organization is to secure funds for us to continue our work. One of the things that I find quite exciting is that when people were working as a coordinator as a part-time job and making a few dollars, it was obvious why they were there. But in many communities, as the money has disappeared, basically, many of those people are still doing exactly the work they were doing when they were paid to do it, and they're now volunteers. So that's the power of community sustainability when you do this work in a way that keeps it going. So basically, at the ground in communities or in regions, if it's a larger area, a community response network is responsible to look at and develop a coordinated community response toward zero tolerance of abuse and neglect. So working in prevention and education. We do absolutely no case management. We are not a body that looks at individual cases. There may be CRN members who respond, but as a group, the CRN is not a response body. It is a coordinating body. So as a CRN, often in community, works with many partners in the community as a group, and also individual members to the CRN should be a microcosm of that community. So we have, ideally, we don't always have all these people at the table, of course, but we work very closely with police, any community services, faith groups, the home and community care people, any of the health authority people that are available, librarians. We've got a real gamut of participation, because we believe firmly that unless the community owns the issue will not be addressed at the community level, and we'll never get to zero tolerance. So we work really hard to bring together both the professional, volunteer, and regular citizen, and have them have discussions. So I know I'm rushing a bit, but I only have 10 minutes. So one of the things that I think is really different about our groups is that we very firmly work to live a set of principles around inclusion, participation, and making sure that everybody is has equal power in our groups. And we don't just do that in a passive way. We actively address those issues. So if someone can't attend a meeting, if we have a meeting in a regular meeting, if someone can't attend because of transportation issues, we will try very hard to get them there. If it's an issue around translation or mobility, we'll try and adapt to that. We firmly believe that real participation in a meeting means that you have the ability to change the outcome of that meeting. And we see often in some community groups where there's definitely a hierarchy of power. And so we talk about those things and work really hard to address them so that everybody feels that they have the same ability to make change in their community. I think one of the other things that's really important about community response networks is that we spend as much energy at looking at how we are working together in the community as what we are doing. It's really, really important that we hold to those principles, that we respond to the community's needs and not to the needs of the membership or the provincial organization. So that means that community response networks look really different in different communities. They may engage in quite different activities. They may have very different sorts of meetings. Sometimes it's an evening meeting in a coffee shop. Sometimes it's a brown bag lunch at a health authority boardroom. Sometimes it's people only getting together once or twice a year and doing all the rest of their work by phone and computer. Sometimes it's people who meet very regularly once a month and have a very clear agenda and run it very much like a business meeting. So it's basically what works for the members of the group is how it's done. We have a real serious role in most communities in doing prevention and education for the community. So we, although we have not really any core funding, we work really hard to get project funding so that we can do a variety of educational events either in communities or across the province. So you may have heard of the Vanguard project, which was with the collaborative that Sherry mentioned, helped to sponsor that, and the BCA CRN had projects in 5 communities that could all be of benefit to the whole province. We've recently been doing a number of knowledge exchanges around the province. We'll be doing 10 of those in various regions where we're bringing together people to discuss the issue of abuse, neglect, and self-neglect, and looking at how we can help develop communities of practice and best practice sharing among people. And so we're just wrapping that up in the next little while here. Some groups have guest speakers on a regular basis in their home communities. Some groups do a lot of community events. In Nelson, we've done a couple of events on things like working with people who live at risk. We just had some very, very successful workshops on hoarding. And those things that we decide to do in our community, we get the information from community people about what it is they want to know more about. And so when we work that way and get the information directly from folks in the community, we have a pretty good idea that we're going to get a lot of support for those things. So, I mean, it's, Caslow is one of my CRN communities, and Caslow has less than 1,000 people in the wintertime, way more than that in the summer. And so when you get 60 people out to a CRN event in Caslow, BC, that's about like getting 25,000 people out to an event in Vancouver. So it doesn't sound like a lot of people. But when you think about that, percentage, that's a large chunk of the community bought into the idea that this is my problem. I am my brother's keeper to some degree. I think I'm probably pretty close to my time here.
You are.
Okay. So one of the things that's a bit different about CRNs compared to the work at this conference is that we do support all adults. I believe the legislation says all vulnerable adults. But what we've learned through our work in community is that there is no us and them. A community is us, and we are vulnerable. But for the grace of God is basically where we're at. And so unless we work as community groups to ensure that we and our children and our parents and our grandparents are being kept safe and have a place to report anything they're concerned about and know that their neighbors and their friends are also aware. I mean, that's what we're working towards, is that feeling of safety and security. So we don't have to have conferences like this one anymore. And that's basically what we're working towards. That's it.
Thank you, Heather. And the next speaker is Leanne Lange, who's going to talk about the designated agency role and response options. Do you want to stay there? Do you want to?
No, I want to.
Okay.
I want to stand up. Okay.
No problem.
Okay, so the key of the mouse. Okay, good morning. So I'm Leanne, and I work at Fraser Health, and as we know, if you're not from here, it is one of the, I think it is the fastest growing health authority in Canada. I always kind of bug Amanda about that, because we're kind of we're on one side of Boundary Road and the other. But needless to say, we're rapidly growing to meet the needs of people. We have 12 hospital sites and many programs in the community to keep people supported. So my role is just to briefly outline what a designated agency does. But before that, I will explain what a designated agency is, because not everyone may have a full understanding. So, in the Adult Guardianship Act, the public trustee designates agencies in British Columbia to be the formal response to abuse and neglect situations for some adults who meet a certain criteria. So, the health authorities the designated agencies are all 5 health authorities, Providence Healthcare, and then Community Living BC, which is an agency that responds on behalf of adults with developmental disabilities. And the Adult Guardianship Act, so that is our law that we've had for the last 11 years. And the mandate that it gives the designated agencies is to respond to reports of abuse, neglect, or self-neglect for adults. So, as Heather mentioned, anyone 19 years of older who can't get help on their own, either because they're being physically restrained or that they have a physical handicap that limits their ability to get help, and or illness, disease, or injury that affects their ability to make decisions about the abuse and neglect. So it's not just about people who are mentally incapable. You may be completely mentally capable, but physically unable to get help because perhaps you have MS and you're bedbound and you're no longer able to move. So the legislation applies equally across the province to people who live anywhere other than a correctional facility. So that includes their home of a relative, care facilities, so either private or public, and also on First Nations communities. And just relatives' home, we receive many referrals with concerns about people who are living in the basement suite of a home maybe owned by an adult child. And so that is definitely a trend that we're seeing as people are living together in the same housing unit, and who's making the rules sometimes is a challenge and can lead to conflict. So we have the law, we have the agencies who are given this mandate, and then we have decided, and it's basically the same within the health authorities, who responds to reports. And we have a range of staff who receive education and support to do this role. There's social workers, so in the hospitals, it's social workers. In our community programs, it's social workers and case managers who may be nurses or occupational therapists or even physiotherapists. And then in our mental health and substance use programs, we have mental health clinicians who, again, are a whole range of professions, social workers, psych nurses, we have clinical counselors. So we have a whole bunch of people responding. So what do we do when we get a report? So we must look into the situation. We must involve the adult as much as possible. We must determine if they need support and assistance. We must report criminal offenses to the police for the folks who meet the criteria, and if we have reason to believe that a criminal offense has taken place. And we have to keep the identity of the person who makes the report to us confidential. And we do our best to do that, but I'll say in practical terms, often we're dealing with conflicted families, and sometimes everyone knows what's going on. We don't say it, but we have a lot of complex family dynamics when it comes to these situations. So we are going to undertake an investigation, a process, and we're going to try and answer 2 key questions. And the first question, and this is to determine, does someone meet the eligibility under the Adult Guardianship Act? So is the adult being abused, neglected, or self-neglected? So yes or no. And then, is the adult able to seek or refuse support and assistance on their own? Yes or no. So if the answer to the first question is yes, they're being abused, and the answer to the second question is no, they're not able to get help on their own, we will proceed down the road wearing our adult guardianship hat, our responder hat. If the answer to the first question is yes, they are being abused, and the answer to the second question is yes, they're able to get help on their own. So for example, if my husband assaulted me, I would be able to decide whether I go home from the hospital or I make a change in my life. So that's the distinguishing piece, able to get help on your own or not. So each time we approach a situation, regardless of what it is, we go back to what are the guiding principles in the legislation, which ensure self-determination and choice. People have the right to make very risky decisions and live with the consequences. Adults are presumed capable. We always look at the most effective and least intrusive support, assistance, or protection. And court is the very, very last resort. And I think in the last 11 years, we've demonstrated that we followed that provision well, because we rarely do end up in court. So we do look at the most effective but least intrusive. And in practical terms, we're not daily going out, kicking down the door and pulling people out and taking them out of their homes. We need to build relationship, rapport, get the facts, gather collateral, find out people's perspective, and be very strategic on how we approach a situation, because these are very delicate and very complex situations. And when we get a report, things are not always what they appear. And that's why we need to do our due diligence. So with respect to the case scenario we've been given, a couple questions for me: potentially financial abuse, potentially emotional abuse. We have someone who's visually upset. And then, is Dora in need of someone to actually just sit down and listen to her and offer support in the moment? So the spotlight today is about financial abuse. And I would say the number one type of abuse that we see in Fraser Health is financial abuse, and that's what comes to our attention. But usually when we start peeling back the layers, there's a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. So from a perspective of conducting a financial investigation, we work in partnership with the public trustee, and Kimberly will talk about what their role is specifically. But, when I'm guiding our staff on a financial abuse investigation, because it may come to our attention first, we do have the power to investigate, obtain information, involve the adult, of course, determine if there's financial abuse or if their assets are at immediate risk. We contact financial institutions to try and verify concerns, so we do have that legal authority within the Act, and we have a forum that we encourage our staff to use and give them guidelines about that. We've got some work to do there, because sometimes there's different levels of understanding. We don't expect our staff to conduct a detailed financial review. That's the role of the public trustee, but we'll do enough work to determine what the next steps need to be. We support informal solutions and then get the public trustee involved as and when needed. So first I'm just going to quickly give the bullets of what the designated responder process is, and then I'm going to kind of switch my hat and talk about steps that the care facility manager could take in the moment. So we have to interview the client. Underlined. We bang this home all the time. We can't talk to everyone else but the person about what's going on in their life. Interviewing the client may be very difficult depending on what the situation is. So we always strategize about ways to meet someone in a safe place, because sometimes if people show up, the risk can go up for a person immediately, and things can be much worse for them than they were to start out with. We obviously assess the urgency, coordinate the collection of collateral information, and many people in this room may be a source of collateral investigation in one of our investigations, or collateral information in one of our investigations. We can coordinate that assessment of, is the person being abused, neglected, or self-neglected? Do they actually have a substitute decision maker, either a representative or a power of attorney or even a committee? Because those people are very, very key in coming forward and making a person safe and making decisions on their behalf. And we coordinate the development of a care plan. And it's a regular care plan. I should call it a support and assistance care plan. And that has a whole range of services that can be provided to a person within our system to decrease the risk. As simple as having someone come in and provide medications regularly, providing a safe personal care, or ensuring they're eating. You know, sometimes from self-neglect situations, people aren't able to prepare their own food, to a whole range of interventions to, in an emergency situation, apprehending someone and removing them and taking them to a safe place, or obtaining a court order which essentially forces them to accept the care plan, great care plan that we've recommended to them. We also involve the physicians. Physicians are very key, especially family physicians, and there's a whole range of responses from them, but they have the history of knowing a person and how they've lived. So these are all the key people that we involve. So if I was the facility manager and this situation was happening in the lobby of my facility, first we would talk to Dora. I would talk to Dora, find out her perspective. You know, scenarios are great, but they're specifically vague for a reason, but I wouldn't assume that because she has Alzheimer's she can't make decisions. I wouldn't assume that because she uses a wheelchair she's unable to get help. I would make no assumptions about her situation and want to find out what her perspective is, give her information and options, offer emotional support, and ensure her safety in the moment, which may mean actually contacting the son and saying, you know, for the weekend, we don't recommend you come visit or something. There's a whole range of things. Support her to contact the bank, right? Follow up with the person she met with and have the bank come and talk to her or make another arrangement for a private conversation. Support her to contact her daughter, who may need to know and be offered support and then refer to the public trustee if that's something that's determined to be needed. So the other thing is, we can't exclude the son, too, because the son has reported that there's no money in the account, and we've heard that before. And we need to talk to the son. And we don't label people as abusers, either abuser or non-abuser. Usually there's 2 or 3 sides to every story, so we need to ensure we have the facts to make the proper decision. Talking to the son, determining his perspective, find out the reason that there are no funds. I mean, if you're the power of attorney, your responsibility is to ensure that person's money is used to pay their bills. So if it isn't, we need to explain what's going on. You know, some people say they're a power of attorney. We need to actually get some proof of that. Ensure he knows his rights and responsibilities, and provide information and options to him as well. And this is, you know, once this is a conversation when he's saying that the bill can't be paid this month. And so that concludes.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. Designated agencies have a huge job, but they've come a long way from when they were first assigned. We had a team meeting over the last few days with all the mentors, and unanimously they said that those designated agencies, the health people working for the health authorities especially, are really providing wonderful input into all the community response networks. So thank you for you guys that have done great work on that, and it's improving and it will grow and we're getting there. So the next person who's going to speak is Kimberly Azian, and she is from Public Guardian and Trustee, and she's going to talk about the roles and responsibilities of the PGT. And I think you're going to do it. Sorry. There you are. You snuck up behind me. Here she is. Kimberly, great.
Thank you, and good morning. Okay, so for the overview of the PGT, I'm just going to focus primarily on the services to adults area and the functions within services to adults that are focused on financial abuse and mismanagement. So when I give presentations, I try and it's a pretty complex area that we work in, and trying to make it simple isn't easy. But what I generally say is that we have 3 main sort of functions. We have clear roles to investigate concerns about particularly financial abuse or neglect of substitutes. We have the ability to monitor the the actions of a private committee. Again, this is primarily on the financial side, and we can investigate them. And then we have the ability through legislation to act as a substitute. And the biggest area for us is acting as committee of estate, generally through certificate. But we can also act as committee of person, as a representative, or a power of attorney. And also of the temporary substitute decision maker for healthcare decisions. So our office it is regionalized, but only for services to adults. So I have 4 teams that provide these services, the investigation services and the acting as a substitute. 2 of the teams are located together here in Vancouver, just across the street and downways. And then I have 1 office in Kelowna that serves the interior north, and 1 office in Victoria that serves Vancouver Island. Of these, on the teams, we have 2 regional consultants per team, so 8 for the province for receiving new referrals and doing the investigations, just so a sense. So the role of the AIS regional consultants, that's where the initial call would come in when everyone else is saying they'd refer to the PGT. It would be a regional consultant that would take that call or referral. They have, they generally will consult on situations. We follow the same guiding principles that Leanne mentioned. So we know that we're intrusive. We know that we're, have some heavy tools that we can use, and we want to be sure that we review the information that's provided to us and be confident that we've got the authority to take any more formal next steps. Usually if the health authority is referring to us, the designated agency, they've done a lot of that collection, and we can rely on that and move a little bit faster. So we provide information and guidance on formal and informal options. A lot of our focus is on, is there a substitute? Does a substitute need to be appointed? If so, what type? Who can do it? And or does a substitute need to be removed? That's a lot of our focus, where I think the health authority, the focus is on getting services to the adult, remedying the problem through that approach. We're looking more at whether a substitute is needed or needs to be removed. So we can investigate the actions of trustees, representatives under a rep agreement, attorneys, and committees. So now, since 2000, we've had these, we still call them new powers, don't we? Yeah, we had partial proclamation in 2000, and we're looking forward to another partial proclamation in a few months, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the best new power that we got back in 2000 was the ability to use protective provisions. And that, even though if you read the Act, that's Section 19 of the PGT Act, it looks like there's a whole range of things we can do. Really, it's narrowed down to being bank freezes. We do about 20 of those a month. We also have the ability to arrange for assessors under Part 3. That's not so frequent. And, of course, we can start the process of pursuing an authority for committeeship for our office if it looks like there are no other options or alternatives. Now, that's really in a nutshell. There's a lot more that we do there. I just put one slide in here because another role that the regional consultants have is they respond to all the requests for our office to act as a temporary substitute decision maker for an adult that's no longer capable and has no one else in their life that meets the criteria to be selected. So client services, just so you have a bit of a sense, we have, again, we're mostly acting as committee of estate. We have about 3,300 clients right now. We get about 500 new clients a year. It ranges between 480 to, actually was over 600 a couple years ago. We're very rarely pension trustee. That's an authority that still can be pursued. It's better for family. We don't tend to go there. Once in a while, we'll go for committee of person, but that, again, that's very rare, maybe once a year. We only have about 100 of those. And our main focus is financial and legal, securing assets, the inventory of assets, insurance, investments, anything that the adult might have got involved in, pursuing legal actions on their behalf if that's needed. and this is just a little more information. The majority of our clients actually are seniors, and we charge fees. A lot of people don't realize that. I've had a few calls where they say, where's the public and public guardian and trustee? Actually, our public services are more our healthcare, acting as a TSDM, or our investigation AIS. There's a small fee attached to that, but we don't charge it if we are able to close down the investigation with another resolution. So, if Dora's situation was referred to us, it would our next step would probably be largely based on who was calling. If it was the health authority, if it was the designated agency, I presume that they would have done a lot of the workup already and be handing us a pretty good picture of what was going on, and they'd be able to give us a lot of background, and we'd also have some confidence that they had taken into account Dora's safety and whether there was anything that needed to be done just for her. If the facility called us, we would again be fairly confident that they were looking to Dora's personal safety and that that was under control, and that what we would then be trying to do is figure out what was going on in the financial world and where do we collect some of this information. If it was the bank that was calling, and we're getting more and more calls from the financial institutions, which is great, we presume they would have some information about the financial history. They'd likely know what facility was involved because they would have seen the checks going there, but they might not know any of the rest of that picture. And we wouldn't know if we had a mandate to jump in and do anything yet. Probably our next step would be to call the facilities, talk to the manager there, and then link in with the health authority, depending which route it came from. The call also could have possibly come from Dora herself, although the description here is someone that maybe isn't able to know where to go for help, or maybe the daughter. Maybe the daughter found out what was going on and she calls us from Toronto and says, something's going amiss, do something. And we'll get those type of calls as well. We have to collect a bit of information just to know if we've met our mandate to do a more formal investigation. And we need to have at least a reason to believe that there is some incapability or that the adult is considered an adult under the Adult Guardianship Act. And we have to believe that assets might be at risk for us to be able to use the next steps of our tools. What we were able to do is, again, we have to keep an open mind. There could be another side to the story. Maybe Jason is gone. It's just simply because he went camping and has all the best of intentions to take that money and do the renos and all the rest. We have to be open-minded here, but there's a lot of red flags. So one thing we can do that's just public information and we have access to is we can run a land title search right away and see if the property is still in the person's name. As we're collecting information, if we've got that reason to believe, then we could maybe use protective provisions. We could do a bank freeze. If Jason's gone and the condo is perhaps vacant, we got to consider whether the condo is at risk and whether something needs to be done there. We would be collecting a medical opinion from the physician, if possible, but we can establish reason to believe about incapability, at least a reason to believe, through other sources if we have to move more quickly. So those are the types of things that we would do if we got this call. Obviously, we wouldn't be leaping to saying, put our hand up and say, we'll be committee. We want to know whether the daughter might be a good option or whether the son just needs to see the error of his ways and get put on the right track. What does the client, or Dora want herself? Those would be the pieces that we'd be looking at. Okay?
Thank you, Kimberly. It does sound like the PGT has a human face, doesn't it? And I think they do. Well, I don't know, coming from the public, somehow there's a scary thing about the public guardian and trustee. And the more I learn about it, and the more I work with the people within this, they are a wonderful group of caring people, and we need to make sure that those services they provide are accessed and appreciated. And what I appreciate from our association's point of view is that we have Kathleen Cunningham at the Public Guardian and Trustees Office, who works really closely with the BC Association of Community Response Networks and with me, and it's great. Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you, Kim, for making that happen. So our next speaker is Bernie Smandic, who is with the RCMP, and she's going to talk to you about how the police fit into all of this.
Good morning, everyone. And I apologize. For some reason, they put the big 6-footer in the middle, so you got the head profile there, shadow there. But good morning. I am Bernie Samandich. I am a sergeant with the E-Division Crime Prevention and Program Support Services. I have about 30 years of policing experience with the RCMP. Of course, I signed up when I was 2, so I do have lots of experience. I am here to thank you on behalf of the commanding officer of the E-Division RCMP. Thank you for your passion and your dedication into looking into this cause and dealing with financial abuse with our seniors and our vulnerable adults in our communities throughout the province of British Columbia. As well as myself, there are representatives here from our E-Division Commercial Crime, Sandra Schultz and Corporal Dave Scherzinski. If you just want to stand up for a little bit, but they're here from our commercial crime. So you financial people, when we're networking, we break for lunch and things, they'll be hanging around. Feel free to go and have a chat with them if you have any questions with them also. So I just want to maybe tell you what I did with this scenario when I received it from our collaborative group here to take a look at it to see if the scenario would work for today's session. I received it off my email, and I took a look at it, and right off the bat, my heartstrings were kind of just pulled. It was like, whoa, geez, what would our members do? But 10 minutes from receiving that email, I was actually going to a meeting where I was going to be surrounded by a number of police officers throughout the province, all with different years of experience and in different roles. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to put myself on the agenda at the very end, and I'm going to run this scenario by them about through a handful, see what their reaction is. So off to the meeting I went and into the group, and it was a totally unrelated topic that the group was with there, so they didn't see this coming at all. And at the very end, I went and put myself up there, and I said, okay, guys, here's a scenario of Dora. And I read the scenario to them. Interesting enough, I was the damper of the day, the downer of the day. I said, oh, Bernie, how can you do this to us? Because they were just all getting ready to go home and were feeling pretty good about things and stuff. He said, no, just tell me what's going on in your head right now in your role as a police officer. What do you think? And right off the bat, there was a senior sergeant like myself, and they said, well, obviously, we're going to need our community to help us out with this. And it certainly fits in with our whole philosophy of community policing. No matter which police agency you're with, it's all about community policing, and they're going to have to help us out. And then there was another, a corporal there, well, a sergeant actually, who was formerly with the commercial crime unit type of thing. And the first thing he looked at goes, well, is this theft? I don't know if this is a theft. It could be a theft. We'd have to look into it to see if it's a theft. So very thinking about that, yes, we're responsible for the criminal investigation, and we would have to investigate to see if, in fact, a criminal investigation did take place. But a lot of questions going through his mind about whether the elements of theft were actually within the scenario and could be proven. So little comments like, well, we'd have to talk to the son, obviously. Like, who is the son? Is he out there? Is he one of the people who have a substance abuse issue and is taking advantage of Dora? And reading in a lot more to the scenario that they needed to. And things, but had a lot of questions going through of finding out. Another person that piped out said, well, I'm really embarrassed, but I haven't got a clue what an enduring power of attorney is. What is that? So we had a little talk about that, and that is definitely an area that we're going to have to work with our members in explaining about the powers of attorney and the theft of powers of attorney. I understand with the legislation that's coming in September, there won't be much impact with the police and us doing our business differently, but that certainly we have to raise our awareness on that. But one of the things that did come out is that, well, you know, there are people that are out there that you can call to find that out, and the public trustee's office is certainly an area that we rely on our partnership there to help us out on that education and finding out about that. Another young member, a female member, said, well, we have to give the daughter a call in Toronto, let the daughter know what's going on and things. And we had a little bit of discussion about confidentiality and how what we can and what we can't do with that. The other area was, well, is she still capable? Is she able to make her decisions? And piped out that we will need to use Fraser Health to help us out with this. Give a call to the doctor. Can we find out who the doctor is? And things, is there a registry maybe that's around there that tells us whether or not, what's the situation with Dora? Can we get this information? And we had those types of conversation. There was one member there, quite a young junior member, who never said anything throughout the whole session, but I pointed out to him at the end, I said, so how are you feeling about this, Kurt? And Kurt says, oh man, I just keep thinking about me and all my fellow workers that just came out of depot, and that's the call that came through the radio, and I got to go to the bank in my community and see Dora there in her wheelchair and all upset. He said, those poor general duty members, man, it's a tough call. I don't know what I do, but having this conversation, I realize that we have a lot of resources within our detachment, within our organization, and within the community. I guess I'd be calling my corporal to say, okay, what do we do? But you know what? We will handle it. We will ask the questions, and we will look into it, and we will see what we can do and work with our community to help Dora out on the situation. So going through my slides here that we've got here, I want to make sure I've got everything covered here. As we stated, our role is to investigate the potential offenses. We recommend charges to our Crown prosecutors if there is evidence to support it, and the Crown do make the final decision in BC whether or not there will be charges. And we do refer to victim services. All our detachments do have victim services attached to it, and you can take advantage of those services if there is a charge, or if you are a witness, or victim in the charge. But here, most importantly, is consider alternative resolutions or solutions. Do some problem solving. All our members get trained in a problem solving model. We call it CAPRA. And you know what? This is going to be the majority of those calls. It's really tough to get it before the courts, and that isn't the only answers for the charge on here. And as a result, probably most of our work will be making an appropriate referral to another community service to help us out with this case and work in getting Dora some help. The Adult Guardianship Act does give us some power to work with a designated agency, and we do have policy draft for working with them, and that's been explained to you how that can happen. So we would support that, so that if we did have to go into the home with a designated agency representative, we are there to help keep the peace and to work with them and do anything that we can to assist them. So in regards to a criminal offense, as we kind of went through the scenario, in the criminal code there are provisions there for theft, theft by a person holding the power of attorney, misappropriation of the money that's held under direction, potential, maybe it's a robbery, maybe it's extortion, maybe it's a fraud, maybe it's false pretenses, maybe it's failing to provide the necessities of life. And those are just some of the charges that we from police could take a look at to see if it was there. But again, we got to work with our community. I'm just going to cover off one more thing while I'm up here, because I probably won't get a chance to talk anymore after this. But we do have information at the very, very back table. It's a Public Guardian Trustees table at the very, very corner on here. And this book is the book that every detachment has and every crime prevention unit has. It's the senior guide. So this is the main manual, crime prevention manual, that Ottawa has drafted up that we use as guidelines out there for giving prevention. So a sample of that's out there, and I've also made a copy of the cover and how that can be ordered for both languages, French and English on the big one. We also, you can download it for free, because it's quite expensive when you do the bilingual one, but you can download it off the internet site there, and we've also attached an insert into it that's applicable here for BC. So when you look at the main one, you can see that it's not necessarily all BC, but we have an insert for our members that is totally for how it works here in BC, explaining the different powers of attorney there. And my information and contact information is also there, and also pamphlets on ageless wisdom that we hand out to a lot of our communities, that our samples are there also for you.
Thank you so much, Bernie. It's been a great privilege for me to get to know Bernie at the collaborative meetings, and they're doing a great job. And what I truly appreciate is that she has the whole province. She reaches out to the whole province. For example, when we were, Heather Archer and I were up last week in Terrace doing a knowledge exchange of conversations that matter in Terrace on a New Horizons grant that we have. And we did it by video conference. So we brought in Smithers, we were in Terrace, Prince Rupert, and Haida Gwaii. And there were 6 people from Smithers on the video conference. They had tried to arrange an RCMP member to come from Terrace to present, much as Bernie has done today, to the group, and they weren't able to go because they were called out on police business, and of course that we understood that. But there was an RCMP member from Smithers with the Smithers group. So I said to him, would you be prepared to kind of fill in and tell us how this all fits together with the CRNs? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So I gave him a few moments. We did something else, and then I called on him. He did a terrific job, and he was understood what we were trying to do. He understood his role as in the community and how the rest of the resources in the community all fit together. So it was Bernie, you're doing a great job, and I think it's Bernie's way of going out and making sure that all the remote areas of our communities are now starting to understand how we can all work together, and that's what we do too. So it's great. Our last speaker, do you want to sit for this? No, she wants to stand too. Okay. Amanda Brown is going to tell us some more about some of the really exciting work that she's been doing, especially with the First Nations communities and applying some of the principles that we try and live on around being least intrusive and promising approaches and so on within the First Nations communities. Thanks, Amanda.
Good morning. I have to confess a little lapse of judgment I had this morning and a miscalculation for all you numbers folks, that I completely miscalculated the timing of my Advil cold and sinus, so that the minute I sat here, it stopped working, that 3-hour time limit. So I'm sorry, I'll try not to sniffle too loudly into the microphone. So just before we get started, I would like to see from the audience, I know there's a lot of familiar faces out there, but if you could just give me a raise of hands of those of you who consider yourselves to be fully trained and accredited adult protection workers in the province of British Columbia. Yeah, so some sort of little half up, half down. Okay, so, I think that's a really good snapshot, because we don't really have a robust training curriculum, or we haven't until just recently, for adult protection workers in the province of British Columbia. You've heard today people talking about designated agencies. You've heard people talking about legislation, coordinated community response networks, lots of really great work. But unlike child protection workers, where there is a very well-researched and robust training curriculum for those staff people to go into the homes of families where there's suspected violence and abuse of children, there's not the same kind of curriculum, as far as we know, anywhere in Canada for doing adult protection work. And we're talking here today about financial abuse, and we're shining the spotlight on financial abuse of older adults and vulnerable adults. And that's one element of abuse, neglect, or self-neglect of vulnerable adults. And there's a whole lot of other types too. So the work that we're asking our designated agencies to do is extremely complex. And some of you folks that are here today are kind of new into the field and just, meeting us now because you're from financial institutions, and maybe you're just hearing about some of this stuff for the first time. And it can be extremely overwhelming. And I can tell you that most of the staff in our designated agency, which, although it is not the most quickly growing designated agency in British Columbia, it is the largest designated agency. We have over 27,000 staff working out of over 500 different offices. So we have a lot of people that we need to train up on this. And this kind of work is allowing us to partner differently with offices of the Public Guardian Trustee, with the other designated agencies, with the other health authorities. And 11 years later, we've actually learned a few things, and we're starting to work better together. We're not nearly as competitive as we used to be, as I'm sure you can see. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is this new curriculum that we have developed for adult protection workers within health authorities. And I just really want to credit, all joking aside, how we do collaborate in this province. We do have what we call an Adult Guardianship Act Provincial Advisory Committee that has members, key contacts from all the designated agencies. We have the prevention, the BC Prevention of Abuse, Neglect, and Self-Neglect Collaborative. I can never get it right. We call it the Collaborative. We work together really well on all kinds of initiatives. And this particular curriculum that I'm going to be sharing with you is a partnership that came together with Fraser Health Authority and Vancouver Coastal Health Authority with input from all the other health authorities to the content of the curriculum. But Fraser Health stepped up with money and time, and Vancouver Coastal seconded some staff, and we were able to put this thing together. So why do we need to do a curriculum, was the question. And that's the question that we within health authorities need to keep taking to our senior leadership, because we're healthcare delivery. So why are we focusing so much time and energy training staff around adult protection work? And this quote came from one of our practice coordinators at one of our very busy hospitals, where she said, there just isn't a day that goes by where we aren't dealing with an AGA issue. And we don't have, we're going to be hearing about data collection systems later on, we don't have a good system for identifying, screening, recording, investigating, and keeping all the data about that within the province. But we know as clinicians, intuitively and subjectively, that these situations consume our caseloads, and we are responding every day in our work. And what our staff are saying is we need to be trained on how to do it. So we have started to put together a package to help staff do this. I just want to let you know that most of the materials that I'm going to be sharing with you now are on the REACT website, vchreact.ca. It's a public website, so those of you who aren't a part of the health authority can find it, because we do have this external site. The whole curriculum isn't up there, but a lot of the other materials are up there. So the curriculum is made up of 11 modules that are 3.5 hours each. The idea behind it is it's meant to be co-facilitated by inter-program, interdisciplinary facilitators to an interdisciplinary audience. We have 3 major streams that work in this area within our health authorities. That's our long-term care case managers, our home and community care folks who go into the communities and provide care. We have our mental health stream within a health authority, and we have our acute care sector. Those are our 3 main service delivery areas that do this work. And what we have found is that depending on which lens you're wearing as a professional, you're going to approach the situation differently. So we really wanted to start breaking down those stovepipes and get people interacting differently. So the whole curriculum is built on the premise that we'll have 2 facilitators representing at least 2 of those areas, and there will be an interdisciplinary audience of learners so that they can bring their wisdom and their experiences from their own lens. The curriculum is divided into a basic, intermediate, and advanced competencies. And we do have a prerequisite for the very first one, which again is a partnership with the Fraser Health Authority, who Leanne has developed an introductory online learning module for Fraser Health staff. So we say Vancouver Coastal Health staff must take that Fraser Health online module before they are even qualified to take the the training through us for these more advanced. We don't need all of our staff to have this level of training, but those people that will be doing investigations must do that. But what we are seeing is that all of our clinical staff, so all of our nurses, rehab folks, care aides, when they get new orientation into the health authority, we're asking them to take that Fraser Health online orientation. So the basic curriculum has 5 modules, and again, each of these are 3.5 hours each. The first module is an overview of the legislation and starts talking about the dynamics of abuse, because a lot of our healthcare staff actually have not had training in the whole issue of abuse and family violence and the dynamics of abuse and the complex relationships that abusive situations can present to the person who's the victim of the abuse, as well as to the family situation. The second module is investigating abuse. So where we start introducing tools and strategies and techniques for how to conduct interviews, how to have the interviews with the caregivers, as well as the suspected abusers, as well as the adults involved, as well as collecting information, and the authority that we have to collect information from people like bankers, physicians, neighbors, landlords, anybody else who might know something that is going to contribute to the situation. So an investigation is actually quite an involved thing, and our health staff need to know the authority that they have and what are some of the limits and boundaries around that. Then we move to a module on self-neglect. Self-neglect is a particularly challenging issue. For those of you who are in the justice field, you know you're not looking for criminal behavior so much as we have somebody who's probably got some sort of cognitive or functional decline, who's lacking judgment, like I did this morning with mistiming my medication. But you know, you can have people that have more serious consequences. Like if that had been my diabetes medicine that I had miscalculated on this morning, you probably would see me functioning completely differently, and my head would not be working. Not that mine's working well today, but it would be working even less well. So you know, so those kinds of things around judgment impairment and illness and physical disability all can contribute to things like self-neglect. And then we as healthcare providers need to be able to figure out what we can treat, what we can't, what we can force, what we can't, who else we can get involved so that we can support the person with all those principles that we've talked about this morning. The fourth module in the basic curriculum is around financial abuse. Financial abuse is a very complicated area of work. There are many, many tools for responding to financial abuse, many, many tools for helping someone who's vulnerable or maybe even incapable to manage their finances. And the test for capability for using each of those tools is different depending on the act that guides those tools. So rep agreements, powers of attorney, bank powers of attorney, committees, so there's so many different tools, and then we have the adult guardianship legislation that's layered in there as well. So financial abuse does warrant at least one whole 3.5 hour dedicated module, but we only do that after they've had these are stepwise in the modules, so we really want other people to understand the basics before we start training them on how to actually do a financial abuse investigation. At the end of that, we have care planning for vulnerable adults, because at the end of it all, as Kimberly said, what we need to do is as health authorities look for what support and assistance can we provide to the adult to make them safe. Health care providers usually are pretty competent in developing health and treatment plans, so that care planning for vulnerable adults who are experiencing abuse and neglect is pretty consistent with the work most of us do already. So we have competencies that we expect our learners to achieve when they have taken the whole 5 modules of the basic curriculum. We expect them to be able to recognize indicators of abuse. We expect them to understand dynamics of abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. Know and understand the factors that can make adults more vulnerable, because it's, as Leanne talked about, it's not completely hinged on cognitive capability. It's not a declaration in this province of someone being incapable to manage their finances, for us to get involved as a designated agency. So we need our staff to understand the role and the function of the designated agency and to understand when they need to report to a designated responder coordinator within our designated agency. So we have different levels of staff with different levels of training. And we don't want any of our staff doing this work alone. We really want to promote the idea of consultation every step of the way. And the frontliners are needing to do the basic investigations, and they have a lot of great skills in doing that. But we do expect that when they determine that there is some abuse going on and that the adult is vulnerable, that they come back to their coordinator to ensure that we're meeting our statutory obligations. So the intermediate curriculum has 4 modules: ethical decision-making in abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. Now, the ethics are woven throughout the legislation, which is terrific, but there's also a lot of biomedical ethics frameworks that we expect healthcare providers to follow. And then when you interweave it with the abuse and neglect issues, it raises a whole lot of challenging issues for the healthcare staff, because it's very difficult when we're now using our adult protection lens and we're struggling with issues of autonomy and self-determination. So really that's when the rubber hits the road and we start having ethical dilemmas, and our staff need to have some tools and some training on how to start dealing with those dilemmas. You know, we all work from the same principles, but at some point when we're saying, you know what, it's not okay, we can't let this person remain in this situation anymore, we need to be more intrusive, that it starts challenging our values. So we have a module on that. Then we move to a module on capability, consent, and vulnerable adults, because this is what hinges whether or not we can become more intrusive or not, and it's really being able to understand and appreciate what the adult's able to understand and appreciate. And that takes quite a high sophisticated level of assessment on the part of healthcare teams. Then we move to a module on using emergency interventions. There are tools throughout the legislation which the panel has shared with you today. But when we start moving in with things like emergencies, where we're going to just come in and maybe knock down a door and apprehend somebody and take them to a place of safety under an emergency provision, we really need to know that, in fact, this person meets the criteria of the Adult Guardianship Act, that our staff are well trained in our procedures for how to do that, and that we have safety plans and monitoring and evaluation of those interventions. So we have a whole module on that, and then we have a module on working with police. The competencies for the intermediate curriculum are being able to understand and act in accordance with relevant ethical and values and principles, initiate and lead a response to emergency situations in accordance with the emergency provisions of the legislation, and to develop the partnerships with police in order to keep vulnerable adults safe. So that's really when we're starting to really go out there and do the work. We need to be able to do it well together and not compromise each other's safety and each other's role within this work. And then to coordinate a very complex multi-system assessment of vulnerable adults' needs. So those are the competencies for the intermediate curriculum, and we're recommending in our health authority that all people that are designated responders will at least get through these to the intermediate curriculum. Now, that's a huge amount of training, really, when you think we've got 9 modules, 3.5 hours each, on top of their regular duties. Most of our staff are not hired to be adult protection workers. They've got other jobs, and this is just something that they're doing in addition. We have then advanced curriculum, which just has 2 modules, and that's preparing to go to court, and a whole extra module we put in there, recognizing the toll that this work takes on staff, and that's the vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. So that's for the people like me and Leanne and Matt and a few other people that are in the audience today, who are the ones that are going to steward the process right to court when we need to, and are going to have to really work with the system and take care of the staff who are experiencing trauma themselves in doing this work. So I'm just going to move on. You can read the competencies for that one. The framework model is consistent for each module. We're taking the same framework, where we start with the adult in the middle. Then our assessment includes the biopsychosocial environment. So don't forget the abusers are also our clients, right? They may have mental health and addictions problems. They may be the spouses also with healthcare issues. So we often are the care providers to the suspected abusers as well as to the suspected victim. So then we have to look at the situation, incorporating the best practices from the discipline and program that we're working in. I'm a social worker, other people are nurses, there's doctors, there's rehab people. We all have different paradigms that we work from, and we all have different colleges that guide our practice, so we have to bring that into our work as well. Then we have health authority abuse and neglect policies, which we have overarching all of this. We have the adult guardianship legislation. So there's many, many layers to the work that we're doing, and we need to have sort of recognition from each of the staff that are working in it that they have to pay attention to all of those factors. Each module that we go through has a similar format in that we look at understanding. We understand the dynamics of the policies and the legislation, recognize the indicators, report, record, react. We always need to have people to write down and document, and we've got all kinds of documentation systems in our patient charts. Respond with best practices, reflect. We always want to bring people back to looking at what the interventions were and seeing what monitoring and follow-up and planning needs to be done and what was the impact on our team as well as ourselves. So all of this curriculum is based on the REACT manual, which I think many of you have seen, and most of the health authorities have incorporated it in whole or in part. So this curriculum really is an attempt to bring alive the manuals that we've developed for staff. The next phase of the REACT manual was to develop a First Nations edition of the REACT manual. So you can access all these materials online as well. This was a manual that we created for those adults in First Nations reserve communities because we knew that they actually weren't hearing about adult protection work. So we wanted to create some tools that they could access where they wanted. And there's video clips and little animated scenarios and all kinds of little things for more of an interactive learning for that. The National First Nations REACT manual, this is now the bird has taken wings, as you can see, the Thunderbird, and we've still tried to keep some of the eyes for the awareness. So this was just the most recent edition of the REACT manual, which incorporates legislation and community response networks from all across the country, all jurisdictions, and we've tried to use the BC model and make it relevant for no matter where people are practicing in Canada. And just one thing about that, there are video clips that really promote coordinated community responses. There's video clips that you can use for your training and workshops. The cast and crew were all First Nations Aboriginal people themselves. There's elders that acted in it, and these case scenarios, they've really brought some dignity to the case scenarios from the first BC edition and have done a really terrific job at that. And then just one of the other tools that we've developed is a capability and consent tool because we're talking about financial abuse. It's just really important for people to understand, our staff to understand that there's so many pieces of legislation that guide decision making and to help manage people's finances, as well as who gets to decide what their healthcare decisions are, where they're going to live, facility placement, and that sort of thing. It's so complex here in BC. We decided we had to create a little, it's like a little reference chart thing for staff to be able to reference when they're looking at helping people with decisions. So thank you.
Wow. Not bad.
Thank you very much, Amanda. There was a lot of information that she was sharing with us, and I kept slipping her notes that she had to hurry up, which I'm sure didn't help. But thank you very much for bringing the work that you're doing to us. She's been sharing it with our people as it's been going on, and it's great work. So thank you. That ends our panel for today, but we're running a tad short, and we really do have to stay on time because we have to be out of here at 4:30 this afternoon. There's no leeway there. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for a break. So I'm going to ask our panel to leave, and then I'm going to ask the next two people who are going to be talking to us to come up, and that'll give you a chance to go and do quickly what you need to do and come back, and we'll start in about 2 minutes. Thanks.